Welcome. This is Sienna Lea of Shadow Synthesis and Rise Multiversity. And I'm here with Tony Rodrigues, an amazing, open-hearted man who was taken as a part of a massive off-world operation to many worlds, where he was a slave for the multidimensional elite warring forces. He was MK Ultra'd, and his bravery to come forward about what is really going on within a galactic secret space program will blow your mind. I am also here with Laura Lee Mistycah, an amazing healer, ghostbuster, and author, dear friend, and as she calls herself, a weird shit expert. She has helped many MK Ultra'd folks recover and lead healthy lives. I have been synthesizing Laura Lee's approaches with my quantum disentanglement shadow synthesis course. And so we have lots of ground to cover. And we are so excited to bring truth and some hope to the many, many MK Ultra'd people, many of whom don't even know they are. Welcome, Tony and Laura Lee.
Hello.
Yay, yay. Are we yay?
It's good to be here. Hello.
Well, first of all, when I first saw Tony's videos, it was like, there's something about him that is so authentic and real, and you don't find that out there that much. And so I was like really drawn to him. And his mannerisms are so matter of fact, and this is the way it is, believe it or not, I don't care, do what you want. And so when I wrote to him and told him this, that when I was out on the internet getting my download, my weekly download of all the crap that's going on, I had to turn it off and then watch one of Tony's videos because that calmed me down. Now, what's funny about that is most people, his videos get them riled up, but to me it calmed me down because it was the only thing that I felt that was real out there, and I needed a dose of that. So thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Interesting you say that without mentioning names, because I don't like to trash people, but we do have several other very vocal people, but I just don't get the alignment. I don't get the truth. I don't get the core that Tony, you bring something that feels so authentic. And
wow.
I also trust your information. I'd like to trust the others, but something in me, my BS detector goes, something ain't right here. So
I think that a lot of people, so like since I've done interviews, I've had literally a few thousand people contact me with similar experiences that they remember. And I think that a lot of them in the beginning, so there were a few things that I said that didn't line up when I was dealing with some researchers. Because when you're in that formative time, when you begin to remember, you're kind of reaching for confirmation. You want, like I wanted to A, believe that it was real, or B, believe that there was a safe way out, that it, like I wanted to find, okay, so what I believe is that what I remember is amazing, but if it's not real, then I want a safe way to know that why do I remember all this? And I just didn't get that. So what I reached for was confirmation quickly. And what I did was, fragmented memories, I connected the dots quicker and I ruined some details in the early days. And I think a lot of people, I think that's not only a common mistake, I think it's 100% of people that are getting their memories back that have been suppressed. In order to connect the dots quickly, get some things wrong. And I think that's why your BS detector goes off on a lot of people. There's a lot of people that I see their info and I don't study info. I make it a point not to study other people. But the ones that I do see, when something does kind of feel off, it just seems like they're connecting dots from other sources rather than their own memories to make it all make sense to them, because it's quite often very vague. You know what I mean? When I remember, there are some things I remember that are still very vague. And so you want to connect, you want to reach for that next thing that's going to connect it. So I think that it's just an effort of that. I think that people are not misleading people intentionally. I think that when you're talking about recovering suppressed memory, it's a very dicey thing, from the start. I don't want to call it a blessing, but blessed to remember as much as I do. Many people don't remember a fraction of it, but they still remember some horrible things. So,
Right. Well, Tony, why don't we start out by just giving our audience a synopsis? I know some of them know who you are, some of them don't. So you can do like a 15, 20-minute synopsis of where you've been.
Well,
And then we'll get into the heavy duty stuff.
Just a synopsis can take a long time, but
I know, but that's good because we need to get everybody on the same page, and so they kind of know where you've been.
But also, our audience are some deep divers, some people that are really ready to extricate themselves from the horrible traumas they've suffered, like you, and they're not going to be shocked. We don't need to go back to the 101 version of this. I mean,
Okay.
You can really go deep with our.
I've found that a lot of people are already familiar with what the term 20 and back, or the 20-year tour, how people are abducted and taken for 20 years and then put right back only a few minutes after they were originally taken. So people are taken, say, in 1980, and then they live from 80, 90 to 2000, and then there's a time travel and an age regression process. There are probably more than one. And they go back and they wake up in 1980 and they go, man, what happened? I mean, how many abduction experiences do you hear that people go, man, I saw some lights and then a craft flew up on us and there was a beam of light and then I don't remember what happened. And I woke up an hour later, I don't know what happened. Maybe they did some experiments. A lot of people like that are going through a phenomenon, not everyone, but there's a phenomenon, a technology that's been given to humans, to our governments, and more than one, not just the United States, that have the ability to take people that are skilled in a certain way, use them for 20 years, recruit them, and then erase their memory and put them right back only a few minutes, 15 to 30 minutes after they were taken originally, right back in time. And that's what happened to me. And so after that happened, I was changed. So I was a 10-year-old boy, and I was taken and then woke up the next morning, and I was a different person. I was a completely different person because I had lived for 20 years, had those memories erased, and then put back in my 10-year-old body. And I had grown. You know, my consciousness, you know what I mean? Not my body, because I was still prepubescent all of a sudden, but I had things that I thought processes of an older man, of an abused man, somebody that had been abused and been enslaved. So my particular circumstance, I was a slave, and I spent 6 to 8 years on the earth through black programs. There was drug smuggling, there was sex slavery. I was privately owned by a billionaire. I found a mountain of evidence supporting everything that I remember. And that's actually the best linchpin of my testimony. And then from there, at the age of about 16 in those 20 years, I was sold into the space program, the secret space programs, which is an entirely different echelon. And a lot of people are familiar with that too, but we basically have active colonies throughout the solar system that interact and trade and deal with extraterrestrial races, many different races. And we have colonies, and each individual colony is an incorporated entity. So there's an Earth Colony Corporation, there's a Mars Colony Corporation, a Lunar Corporation, and I belonged to the Ceres Colony Corporation, which was a corporation based on the dwarf planet Ceres, which is located in between Mars and the asteroid belt. And I lived about 12 years there. And I was a slave. I did ship maintenance for the first 8 years or so, and then a year of training, and then I served on a newer, more modern cargo ship as a cargo engineer. And I have very detailed memories of those times, coming back to Earth on that ship, carrying out missions, offloading cargo inside the Earth to inner Earth nations, and picking up cargo from the U.S. military in Diego Garcia, as well as other missions on Earth, and then out to the Kuiper Belt, where they had like a warehouse facility, and elsewhere throughout the cosmos. I mean, extragalactic. We went to other galaxies. We used natural portals and went to other galaxies and traded cargo. And our mission was to trade goods for technology. That was the mission directive, and we did that for the last 2.5, 3 years that I was there, and then I was put back. So does that?
That's very good. You know what your information reminds me of is Stargate SG1. Have you seen those?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Does that not ring true to you? I mean,
well, Yes, and you know what? That technology exists. So there were beings that I met that were in a doing a 9 to 5. I spent one instance, and I've said this in many interviews, but I spent one instance a few hours with a short reptilian ET, and we communicated, and he was the equivalent of, he lived a different set of years, like their lifespan was different than ours, but he was the equivalent of in his mid-20s. And he had a wife and young children, and he went home to his planet, a heavy gravity planet with a red sky, he said, and he went home every day. We were on the moon, and I was like at a doctor's office situation in the process of being returned, at the very end. And he said he went home every single day. He woke up in the morning, and it was just a job to him. He was there. He was security in case I wanted to be violent or escape or something. He was security because he's from a heavy gravity planet. He was very physically strong.
Wow. You were friends with him. Was he the one you became kind of buddies with?
I really did feel like he had a great sense of humor. He cracked jokes. He was very
reptiles can crack jokes.
Yeah, he was a person, and I guess one thing that the thing that really bothers me in ufology after getting my memories back and then going out, I've done talks at certain conferences, and I've met a lot of people that are into it. The only problem that I really have with ufology as a whole is they throw a blanket over everything. People want to say, I met somebody who's Pleiadian. I have the Pleiadians contacting me. Well, the Pleiades is a few 100,000 stars with just as many worlds and just as many races there. So it's really a vague statement to say somebody's Pleiadian or I'm contacted by the Pleiadians. That doesn't mean, that's not singles out anything. That's like saying, I know somebody that lives in South America. You know what I mean? It just does. It's throwing a blanket over a very big. The other thing is a lot of people lump everything into just this area, our constellations. That's where everybody's from there. And, Syrians or from Aldebaran or whatever. But really my experience was that we had access to the entire galaxy as well as other galaxies, and many species did have access, and they could easily get here and go back home. So it's just a very vast amount of species that are all over, many galaxies. So it's kind of like an exhaustless list of different species that you can have contact with at any given moment up there, or even down here. And I think that the variety of that is why so many people's accounts are radically different. People that are taken, it doesn't. If you're a researcher and you look for common denominators and people that have extraterrestrial contact, there aren't many, because the extraterrestrials are so numerous. The people that are contacted are by so many cultures that are so numerous that there are different reasons that they are taken, and different levels of technology that takes them. So as a researcher, it looks like all BS because it doesn't line up. A lot of it doesn't line up. But the truth is that there's just that many different programs out there interacting with us.
Are any of them good guys? Are they all evil?
Okay, and so that's it. Right. So that's a great, right? That's your first natural question, and that's another blanket statement, though. Do you get what I'm saying? Like the reptile that was my security guy, I could easily look at his job and what they were doing to me, the processes that and label that as evil and say he was an evil, bad person, but he was a person. And this is the same way that depending on your matter of perspective towards the United States, there are many people in the world that believe the United States is an absolute evil entity, that it's evil and everybody in the U.S. is evil. And that's just not true. It depends on your perspective. If you're on the other side of the fence or whatever interest that a species has is what they are. But what I found with all the interaction I had on Sirius Colony, there were many different ETs that came. There were many that looked just like humans. They came and visited. They were doing business. And the fact is they were people. I refer, once, and I said this before, it could be a bucket of goo. As long as it can speak a few 100,000 words, it's a person. And that's the, once it's on a certain level of intelligence, it could be a giant monkey or a dolphin or a bucket of goo. But if it can speak to you with a few 100,000 words, it's basically a person. And ETs behave like people do. And look at us down here. So we're not evil. I don't see mankind as evil. I see a lot of evil things that go on. And I call it foolish. I don't call it evil. I think people that are doing bad things to other people are just foolish.
They're fools. You're right.
I heard at one point, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I heard at one point, because I've listened to many of your interviews, that you said in that interview, I mean, it was very graphic about horrible, horrible things that you were made to do in multiple situations. Well, being a slave is bad enough, but the sex slave and just really horrible, horrible things. And then you said that there's a change going on. I'll call it the omniverse, like everything. And that they're calling back a lot of these sinister agendas. It's like that there's something going on, not just in Earth, there's a huge correction or something. And I wondered if you could speak to that at all.
Yeah, so that was probably a long time ago. That was an interview, quite one of the older ones, because there were we were seeing a lot of changes in society. I mean, before, you know what I mean, our last year that we've had, we were in 2020. It's important to mark the date. You know, we're in 2020 now, so we're seeing a lot of birth pains. You know, I don't know what's going to be born, but the world is about to change greatly in the next few years. It already has. The world's already changed. But back then, so somebody like me that usually came forward typically was not allowed to speak publicly for long. There were many assets, military assets, that would come and shut you up. And who knows, they might end up shutting me up anyway. But there were things like, I think that there for a while, it was in 2016, I want to say, right around there, we had that string of earthquakes. And I think that a lot of technology, I think that there are a lot of technologies around the earth that are based in, for lack of a better term, and I would say a watered down version of mind control that people have from the media and just from, you know, television and radio. All the space programs all accepted that every bit of media on Earth had a signal in it that would make you, that had a mind control version embedded in all the signals. When you listen to the radio driving down the road, there's a signal there that makes you kind of uncomfortable, or like what it is it's basically a signal that makes you irritable. And then when they can flash a product, like a commercial, they remove the signal. And so you're attracted to the product because the irritability goes away. And then back to the music, and it makes you irritable again. So there are signals like that, and it's based around a form of general mind control. And then doing that technology, they can flash political ads, they can flash whatever they want, and lower that signal of irritability and make things look attractive to you subconsciously. So there's a lot of that going on. So I think that a lot of the technologies like that, there were some more higher tech ones that are more kind of ethereal, that dealt with, you know, your subconscious while you were sleeping, like, you know, because a lot of our subconscious communication goes on in the ionosphere. There's a lot of CIA documents, and there's a lot of science around that. And I think there were technologies about that would suppress memory recall, and for people that were taken and went through these programs and couldn't remember their memories, that was destroyed in an early round of the secret war that's going on. If that answers your question, is that kind of where your question was?
We could have a lot of talks about that question. That was a good beginning moment. Laura Lee, I cut you off. You go.
Oh, I've just been wondering, do you use any of the skills that you learned on your 20 and back in your profession now? Like, I was wondering that. Is that, do you do the same thing, kind of?
Yes and no. I kind of shy away from it. And really, what I do for my self-work now is, you know, after I was able to put a finger on everything that, you know, I had a lot of problems for those 20 years. And really until I got my memories, which was in 2015. So that put me at 43 years old, going on 44 years old, right in there. So that entire time I had some pretty bad emotional problems. So I was always searching for a way to deal with why I had things going wrong with me. And when I got my memories back, I could put my finger on it. And since then, I've been able to remember some of the things I was taught. Then, you know, early on, I did remote viewing and psychic service in the first 2 years. You know, from the age of 10 till about 12, I was trained in remote viewing, and a lot of the lessons I learned from that, I have been able to apply and kind of put a more positive spin on for myself. And so I do. So to answer your question, yes.
Yes. And the technical stuff that you were working in all these facilities, that technical stuff is all back. Do you use that in your Earth life?
Well, so this is a big shocker, is that a lot of the technical stuff I learned really wasn't that technical. Like in the first ship I worked on, I worked ship maintenance, but the processes that I did were completely automated. I can use an analogy and say like this, like somebody that works at McDonald's for 8 years cannot make you from scratch a quarter pounder.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like they don't know the ingredients or the process. They can't even make the French fries. They really can't. Somebody can work at McDonald's for 8 or 10 years, and then you go home and you give them potatoes and all the ingredients. They cannot make the same French fries at McDonald's because it's so automated. And that was what it was like for me. I woke up every day when we went to the ship, and there was a screen like at McDonald's, like a big TV screen, and it told me what to do. And I didn't have a name. I had a number. It said number this and blah, blah, blah. This is what you do. Go to the tool crib and get these out. And it had coordinates of tools, just a list of tools, and it would print them out, and I'd go get them and bring them back and said, now go to this junction of the ship, and it would show me on a map, and I'd go there and set up the tools and go back to the screen and it'd say, this is what you do. And it would be a short video of what to do. And I would fix, it was always maintenance. Really, it was like refilling hydraulic fluids and oil pressures and things, just getting pressure readings and sometimes replacing valves and entire boxes. But everything was automated step by step and told me what to do. So the very next day or the 2 days down the road, I totally didn't care or forgot about what I was doing until I had to do it again. So it was a completely automated process. So no, I have been asked straight up, do you know how to build the spaceship? Do you know how to do it?
Yeah, right.
And I don't have working knowledge of the antigrav or a lot of the systems. There was artificial gravity. There were food replication. There were, basically printed food from a molecular level. And to me, it was just like a microwave you hit a button on and got your soup. And so there were a lot of things, like now, in the space, when I was on Ceres Colony, there were a lot of things that were high tech to us, but they weren't, look at how high tech we are compared to back in the 60s. Do you get what I'm saying? We take that, if you went back to the 60s and people ask you, hey, make a microwave or whatever, or a computer, what's our lab? How do you work a laptop? Tell us how it worked. You know what I mean? These are things that you just take for granted. You don't know. You don't think about.
Well, what I was wondering is, with all the things that you did, if you could just go out and maybe change the oil in your car and you never knew how to do that before. Is anything like that happen? Like you just know stuff, and even though you haven't been taught in this?
Yes.
life?
Well, in one of my interviews, I talked about what my job was. And I had never done, in my life, I'm a woodworker. You can see, we're in my garage. I'm a woodworker. I build things out of wood. I'm building furniture and I refinish things. That's what I do for the last 30 years of my professional life and my real life as Tony in America. That's what I do. I'm a woodworker. And I've done a few other jobs, but always came back to woodworking. But there was a time in an interview that I described what my job was, what my duties were in the cargo engineering and what I did. And I had somebody contact me that worked for a shipping company in the Mediterranean. He said, I do your job. I said, what do you mean? He said, I do your job. It's exactly what you described. I measure and I input the weight, the height and width of every box that goes on the ship. And it's exactly how you described it. And I said, no kidding. And I said, so did you have, what kind of scale did you have? We had things that could take pictures and give the dimensions, but we had an actual scale that we put things on. And there were other things. And he said, no. He said, yeah, exactly like that. He said, don't forget the tipping report. And I said, no, I didn't have to deal with that. I didn't get a tipping report. The guys in the main cargo bay got a tipping report because anything over 1 meter tall went to the main cargo bay, not in my cargo bay. And it was like, I had a professional conversation about that stuff. And in my life, I've never done that. And you get what I mean? It was a surreal conversation that I had.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah. Okay. So that's happened. Yeah.
Do you want to interrogate now?
Yes, I do. Where were you on the night of? No, I have so many things. All right, here's one. Were you always one person, or did you have different alters that changed and did different things?
Yes. So you're talking about during the 20 years that I was taken.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you were taken more than 20 year, weren't you?
Just once, and
just
I
once.
was the same person. So I experienced that in linear time. Like, I when I was taken, I grew up in these programs and went from program to program as a 10-year-old boy all the way till I was 30. And I experienced it like that. Like, that's how the experience was. It didn't chop up and move back and forth. There were times when I was sleeping, when I would go to sleep and I would wake up. Like, there were times that I went to sleep as Tony, and I would sleep very deep sleep. And there were times that I woke up in that life, in that other person's life. Like, I woke up. There was one time when they were keeping me in a very small, uncomfortable room on the moon, and it was a very kind of it was like a depressing time for me. That person was depressed. And I went to sleep at my farmhouse in Michigan, and I woke up in that room, and I was in that body, and I went, what is going on here? And I looked around, and I kind of had memory of I felt weird, and I said, whatever. And I went back to sleep, and I had the out of body kind of falling back to my body feeling. And I woke up in my room in the morning, and I went, what the hell was that? And so there were times when that happened, but to answer your question, I experienced that 20 years in a straight 20 years. And then went back to my life, and then experienced my life in those same 20 years. A lot of people think that there was two of me and I jumped back and forth, but really the experience was that 20 years happened first, and then I went back to my 10-year-old self in Michigan and lived till now. So that's what it felt like to me.
But when you were off-world for 20 years, you said, I went from being a boy to a man. Off-world, you were a boy and you grew up, or you just were put right in a man's body? No,
I was a boy, and so the first 6 years, 6 to 8 years. So the timeline is a little bit, I haven't really pinned it down. It's not like they celebrated my birthday, when I was out there. So I really didn't keep track of years like we do. Like, okay. You know your age, you know what year it is, and you know where you were 5 years ago. That wasn't a concern of mine at the time. So, but it was like the first 6 years I was on Earth. I lived in Peru. I lived in Seattle. And from there, I was sold into the space program. So the first 6 years of the 20 years, I lived on Earth. And so
As a child?
From 10 till about 16. Yeah, 16 or 17. From 10 years old. Yep.
Okay, so they didn't take you out of the body as a child and put you in an adult body and send you off on things.
And the other thing is, a lot of people say, well, you were probably in somebody else, but I looked exactly like me. I had the same look. I had the same physical, some people are good at horseshoes. You know what I mean? Like, they just physically can always do good at horseshoes. Yeah. And some people are good at balancing or like yo-yo. And I had the same gifts that I do now. You get what I'm saying? Like, it was the same body. People always remarked about my green eyes. In the 20 years, I was like, it was rare. And so people always remarked about my eyes, and they wondered what nationality I was. And you know what I mean? I'm basically I don't want to say, I don't want to toot a horn or something, but I'm saying like racially, in America, I'm a kind of a unique person. I'm a Portuguese person. So there's not many of me in Michigan where I am. And so, I'm a mix between Portuguese and like English and French. So on my mother's side, so I'm a rare ethnic genetics, and I was just as rare in the 20 years. So people would always come in and, not always, but pretty often people would remark that I wonder what you are, you know what I mean? Like, and I get that now. And so,
what are you?
It was the same. I looked the same in the mirror. It was the same person. I wasn't allowed to have facial hair. That was the other thing, is I looked terrible without facial hair. So I wasn't allowed. And I remember that one time that a military guy came into one of the places that I went in I'm talking about the last couple of years. There was a military guy that went in there, and he had facial hair, and they said, and the girls I was talking to said, you would look really good. You should see if they'll let you grow some facial hair, because they let him do it and it looked great on him. You know what I mean? They said, you would probably look better if you did. They were like, look at it. They were like holding up stuff, and they're like, he would look great with facial hair, right? And so I did, and I went to work the next day, and I asked, and I said, is there anything I can do to just grow a little bit of hair? And they were like laughing. They laughed. They go, no, not you. It's everybody doesn't have facial hair. There was a barber. So what it was you went through a public shower, and at the end of your showering, when you got out and got dressed, there was somebody there that checked you. And then when my hair started getting long, they said, nope, stop and go over there to the barber. And you would report to the barber and get shaved and your hair cut. And so and I remember asking the barber, I was like, can't you just give it a shadow? Can I just get a shadow? He's like, no.
Wow, I guess rugged individualism isn't really popular.
It was a military organization, so everything was ran like that.
So we've heard of, and I'm sure one thing does not fit it all by any means, because we've worked with people that are assassins, that are that they had multiple altars. And some of the altars would be like in a crypt somewhere, or, like that, somewhere, and they activate them and they go off and do a horrible thing and then put that one asleep, and then they're back to another one. And there's huge psychic disturbance because at the end of the day, we are one being. I mean, we may be fractured and scattered through the whole omniverse, which apparently many of us are. But as we call these different parts back, they're all a part of us. And if we've done horrible things, even though we've been totally mind controlled, sometimes tortured, in order to do it often, people can carry a shame and a guilt in the sense of not wanting to hurt anybody that they don't know what is coming from. And we can do a deep analysis of childhood, even past life. It's just not anywhere. And then they have these memories of going off world and being an assassin. And then we're using some of Laura Lee's techniques to bring that altar back and rehab it and clear it of a lot of the trauma and the abuse. And then, I had a person that I'm working with now, a client of mine, and she had anxiety her entire life. She's like, and we did a timeline regression, one of Laura Lee's protocols, and she went back to a place where she was made to do horrible things. And when she when she cleared that, and when she went through the process to bring that in and to have that be healed, the next week she no longer had anxiety. Gone, done, finished. And we're experiencing that in a number of cases. I know Laura Lee has many case studies like that. So I don't know what my question is. I guess
all these people like Tony were made to do horrible things, just like Tony was when he was a kid. He had no choice. He was there with these assholes that were in Seattle, and he couldn't run away. He could do nothing. So I think that's what she's trying to say, is that we've been able to work with people and help them that have had similar experiences, so that the trauma isn't continually running through their nervous system. I think that's kind of what she was trying to say.
Right. So, okay. So, as hard as it is for some people, so I've had a few people that contacted me and they just couldn't believe what I was talking about. Really, they couldn't, and they had a hard time. And if everything that I remember didn't pan out and I could be proved wrong, it would be much easier on me to just go back to life and not worry about any of it.
Yeah.
But the other result that's happened from me coming forward is that many people have contacted me and with the exact same thing like you just said, like people with anxiety, people with drug addiction, or people with sexual problems, or all kinds of things. And I get it back to the same kind of formula with them, because I don't do what you do. I'm basically a witness. So whenever somebody asks me something, I witnessed it. I saw it up there. So I have a different perspective. And sometimes I think I can help people by letting them know, what I saw, what was happening up there, on the other side of it. But in my experience, it's been that most people don't have the memory of what caused the problem. And that was what happened to me personally, was that I had relationship problems. I had I never had a girlfriend in my real life because I just had emotional problems big time whenever I was awkward, and I couldn't figure out why, because I was a normal person. I've never been treated for any kind of mental disorder or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy. And even my friends, I'd be with the guys back in my early 20s, and they would go, "Man, Tony, what is wrong with you, man? Something's up." I'd be out drinking, having beers with the guys, and be like, "I know. Something's wrong. I can't put my hand on it, man. I can't put my finger on it. Help me out." And I just never could. But then when I got my memories back at the in 2015, then I had claustrophobia. I was afraid of tight spaces all of a sudden. The day I left, before I left, I wasn't. My sister and I used to play hide and seek, and I would hide in small, tight places that she couldn't because she was afraid of spaces. And the next day when I got back, when I was taken at 10 years old, then I got back, I had claustrophobia. We played hide and seek that weekend. And I couldn't hide under the bed because I was terrified of small, cramped spaces, and I never knew why. And so my whole life I was had mild claustrophobia, if you could call it that. And when I got my memories back, all of a sudden I got the memory of being trapped in a pipe and being burnt very badly. And that was why. And as soon as I could put my finger on the cause, then the problem is very easy to unravel and deal with. Do you get what I mean? Like now it's not so bad, because now I can remember that, that happened and it's over with, and it's not what's going to happen next. And because the memory being suppressed left so many doors open where your mind could wander, that the problem persisted. And so that's kind of like what you said. Like
once you understand why, much of that just goes away because you understand it. So I totally concur with that. That's absolutely correct.
I think go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of the biggest things.
A lot of people are terrified of their shadows, of going into traumas, whether it's, this lifetime, early childhood, or past lives, this kind of stuff. There's this knee-jerk, avoid it like the plague, because a lot of it was so horrific that to have to re-experience it is just, our, survival instincts is I'm never going back there. So this method that we're using, Laura Lee created with Hal, or I don't know how it all got created, but anyway, people can go into the most horrific situation as a witness, and they can experience it, and they're not instructed. We do not instruct them to dive deep into the whatever it is, you can just look at it, and the truth does set us free. So they can go to multiple, in a way, we're doing what you've come across organically, is we're taking them to multiple locations, or they're taken by their greater being to where they have to do the soul retrieval and find a part of them. And they get that, okay, I saw, that I was a mass murderer, but that it wasn't my fault, and I got memory wiped, and I had absolutely no choice, and they resolve it, and they can live through it, and then they can do another one, and they can do another one, and there's so many crazy things that they've done to people. Like, for example, we talk a lot about people, superpowers, and Laura Lee, she's got her website, The First Wave Indigo. She's talking about the beings that came here on either the holographic rescue team, the cosmic rescue. People came in to fix this place from what has happened to it, let's just put it that way. And they are highly evolved beings. They have advanced training. And when we came in here, we had to make forced agreements to shut that down. And also MK seems to take people with certain capabilities, and then they use it for their nefarious purposes. But the process that we're going through is retrieving that person from that place and healing that memory and removing the guilt and the shame and the trauma and the PTSD. And then these capacities come back online. They're superpowers. So I guess my question is, are your superpowers coming back? Is that a part of your profile?
Good question. I like that.
That's a neat question. I think I've seen a lot. So since I've traveled and been to some conferences and just got out there and met people. People asked me to come and speak or just be places, and I went there and met people that I've seen people with, and people always contact me like, I want to help you and do some healing or whatever. I'm a psychic healer. It doesn't matter how far away we are. And I'm not skeptical, but I'm kind of like, I let people do their own thing. And if something happens, fine. If nothing happens, fine. I don't invest into it. I've been completely blown away by what some people can do. So some people that claim it, and I go, okay. And then you sit down and have, an interaction with them. And some people have some very astounding psychic abilities. I mean, some people are just astutely, incredibly gifted. I have my own, I like to think that, on a level of ability where, intuitive ability, that I'm at like a lower level, like I have a baseline. And that memory is my superpower, the ability to remember suppressed things.
Wow,
also,
yeah.
I have the ability to remember details that don't. Like, I connect dots of details in my life that most people don't. And I catch people, I can catch lying, or I can put together things because I can remember things from years and years ago that also would line up. So memory has been my power. That's been my main ability, was the ability to remember.
Why do you think they're letting you share your memories with humanity right now? Is there a change going on, or are you?
I think that there's a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that at the end of when they were putting me back, I think that they are fighting amongst themselves, for one, and so they have too many irons in the fire to go chase down small guys like me. No, for one. For two, when they were putting me back, they had concluded. So they had technology called a chronovision, where they could look at probable futures. They had a computer that they could plug into me and that would speak to computers in the future, and they could figure out probable outcomes of what happened to me. So when after I lived for 20 years, I was 30 years old. They flew me back to the moon. They carried out a process. It took a few weeks. It was very painful. And all of a sudden, I woke up on a table, and I was a 10-year-old boy again. And I had no memories of what was going on. And from that time, they were scanning the probable futures of what was going to happen when they put me back. And they concluded that in all those futures, I remembered. And I wasn't, being a slave, I'm not supposed to remember. Some people, you know what I mean? Some people it's okay if they remember, but I was a slave. And so I was, and not only that, but like ushered through the side door of the entire body of that, system, the entire system. I didn't go in the front door. I went in the side door. I was basically taken privately. And so it was unacceptable. So they sent me for another round of trauma-based mind control, to another round of like a brain programming to forget. And when they put me through that, they did another round on the chronovisor, and they determined that I was still going to remember it. And they were going to take me for a lobotomy. They said, if this doesn't work on you, then you're going to get in. There was a lot that happened in that time.
Whoa.
Covered in the book. But they said, look, you are going to remember, so you're going to have to get the surgery. We're going to put you back. You're going to get a lobotomy, and you're going to wake up tomorrow, and you're going to be crippled, mentally crippled. That's take him down there. And so the security guy, that same reptile that was security, this was that time. He was totally heartbroken that he had to escort me down to the surgical center so that they were going to perform a surgery and make me forget. And when he took me to the office there, he walked up, he said, you sit here. And it was like a ET doctor, like a hospital, but full of ETs, greys and reptiles and humans. And he said, sit down here, I'm going to go. And when he went into the window to tell them that I had to go in and get this procedure, they couldn't find my record. My record had been deleted because of combat missions that I had done. My captain, and it's a very long story. It's a very long story, but my captain had my record deleted. I was deleted. And so the process couldn't happen if they couldn't have a record to put it on. They said,
hey,
no record, then it doesn't matter if he remembers or not. They said, you know what I mean? There's no record of him. So even if he does remember, there's no proof that on our end, that he was up here. So he can spout out all day long about what's going to happen because there's no record. And so just put him back. And he took me from there. He took me from there back to the department that was going to fly me and put me back in my bed. And that's.
I bet he was happy.
He was like, you are the luckiest guy. He was like, he said, you just got so lucky. You know, he's like, I can't believe it, how lucky you got. And I was like, at that point, I had no memories. The memories of the 20 years in space were gone. I had memories of being a kid back in Michigan. I had my memories back. If you get what I'm saying.
Your old memories, right?
Right. I was back. I was the kid from Michigan again, and so I said, okay, right. I'm so lucky. I feel lucky to even be here. I can't believe I'm talking to an ET. You know. And so I didn't understand what was going on, but so those are things that kind of filled in as time has gone on, and that particular. I've touched on a few things of that time, I call it the return process. The entire return process was weeks, and it was very, for lack of a better word, it was very traumatic, and it was a very significant experience because it determined where I am now by still remembering and talking about everything.
Well, I agree that that's one of your superpowers is memory. I totally concur with that. I'm excited because my memory sucks. Okay.
Well, you know what's funny is I'm very forgetful minded in the short term. In my day-to-day life, I forget stuff. I forget my sunglasses constantly. You know what I mean? I'm forgetful. When people tell me stuff, I go, yeah, and then I forget. But long term, like I remember details over a long time. So I'll remember things years down the road, minor details that I'll go, hey, don't you remember that time? And I thought everybody was like that, but really, you know, from the people in my day-to-day life, everybody says I'm kind of weird that way. That I remember a lot of insignificant trivia,
like jokes and things like that.
Yeah, like TV quotes and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Sienna, have you got some more interrogation to do there?
I certainly do. I wanted to ask you about your physicality. In one of your interviews, you had said you have some physical issues, and it may have to do, I don't know if you said this or I was thinking, that it may have to do with radiation poisoning, because when you get taken and come back in and go out and come back in, I mean, they say stewardesses on airplanes have horrible issues with their whole field getting wonky. And I have been taken several times that I'm aware of, and it really messed up my energy field. It felt horrible. And I could see where it could even be affecting the DNA. What can you speak at all to the physical challenge? And you had said something about you felt like you were aging in one of the interviews. Maybe I got this wrong.
Recently,
but
yes.
Yeah, that you seem to be like aging rapidly, and you felt it may have something to do with this. And I felt like, Laura Lee, you may know something about that too.
Well, it's funny that like I'm going back to the doctor on Wednesday. On this Wednesday, I'll be going back, but they're testing me I'm going through a series of cancer tests now. And so there are some things that, you know, going on quickly that have just popped up in the last year and a half or 2 years that, you know, like everything's changed, appetite, everything, heart stuff, cholesterol, all of it. It's like all of a sudden. And I've always been pretty healthy and I don't want to say above average, but I've always been like, you know, in my 20s and 30s, I had pretty bulletproof health. And so all of a sudden I have allergies that have happened. It's falling apart. And so they said I might have a version of prostate cancer, but I don't know. I don't know yet. So I'll be going through a battery of tests pretty soon. But
well, you need to get a session with us because something happened with his DNA. Don't you think so, Laura Lee? Because going back and forth, there's something, and they did a lot of genetic experiments too on him. And can't we help with that?
Well, of course we can, but we can talk about that later. It doesn't have to be out there for everybody to hear.
Well, but in general terms, that these things happen.
Right.
Because I think they happen. I mean, 60% of all indigos are in MK? I mean, there's a lot of people in these programs. They don't have the memory. they're not a Tony. They can't articulate, this is an incredible gift you're bringing to humanity. But there are a lot of people, I think, isn't it a war for our DNA? And I mean, aren't they using, because we did a timeline on me, and we did regressions where they did this hybrid program, you know, where they had me birthing these disgusting reptoid, partly spider antibody things that were populating worlds. I mean, they're birthing massive amounts of AI to take over the planet and probably a lot of other places, but they needed our codes because these beings didn't have a source connection, and the human genome has source connection. So they're taking, this is happening to a lot of the MKs I'm working on. They're having, you know, they're in rooms and they got wires hooked up and they're taking them, and then we track it further and go into the next location, and there's whole worlds being birthed by us. And it's disgusting and horrible. And when you bring your energy out, and I no longer consent, I'm taking my DNA back, and we collapse those worlds and take them to zero, then our health improves. I mean, substantially.
So I wanted this, you talked about a bunch of stuff earlier and I didn't get a chance to touch on.
Okay.
Like you said, you talked about, you worked with people and they're waking up and they go through several different roles. Like one time they're an assassin and then they go to something else and they're bouncing. And I've met people like that too. And it's one of those things. It's not the program that I went through. It's not the system that I went through. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, or that they're not being genuine. And what I found is that there are many people that are saying the same thing, that they were taken and trained for a certain role and then taken again and put into a different role. And sometimes they even overlap. And what seems to be is that, they have cloning technology, and what it is when they clone somebody, the clone is basically a vegetable. It doesn't have a spark of life. It doesn't have a soul to it, and so it's not smart. It doesn't do anything. So that's part of the process. That's a technology, is taking consciousness out of one person and then splitting it into multiple clones. And then honestly, that speaks to how mankind is. I didn't want to get into a whole profound thing, but you got to think, you've met some people that are certainly more conscious than others. You know, you meet some people I've met people that really, they behave more like an animal than a person, because really like a low vibe person. I'm not saying that they're evil or bad or something, but their behavior was really only, concerned with the immediate moment. Like people that are not doing well in the system, because they really have the consciousness more like a lower, like an animal.
They seem to be burning down the cities across the United States at the moment.
Right, exactly. And I don't want to point fingers, but what I'm saying is that some people on top of that have a great deal of consciousness. I've met people that certainly have more consciousness in them than I do. And I've met people that are very advanced mentally, and that you can just tell by them. And some people can just handle so many tasks and do so many things because they have a great deal of mental output. And so those are the people that these programs are taking. That's the technology. So we have an amount of, and Randy Kramer calls it quantum superfluid consciousness. We have a certain amount of that in us. And so some people have more of it than others, and they seek these people out so that they can use it to power these clones and to power other versions of themselves and split it up. So there's a great deal of technologies about it, and you think how useful it would be. When you look at these things, you said it right, that how terrible what you go through, and when some of these people are so horrible. But think about the jobs they're doing, and think about how effective that ability would be. And then for those people, so to take some of your consciousness and put it into a clone, and then have that clone go into combat. If it dies, the consciousness just returns to the original person. It doesn't go away. As soon as you're alive, you know what I mean? There's a forever bond. It's like taking some water out of something that's a certain temperature and pouring it into another vessel, and then that vessel going in, and then if it breaks, the vessels break, the water is a different temperature than everything else, so it returns to where it came from and you get the water back. Do you understand how incredibly useful that would be, especially for a military?
Well, I mean, apparently it's widely being used for some of our most beloved political
Oh, yeah,
people.
you said it. You said that, right. So,
I know you don't want to go there. I'm
well,
just saying.
the first thing everybody says is go ahead and prove it. But, here's the thing, disprove it. That's what I say. Go ahead and disprove it then, because you can't do that either. And
Exactly.
when I say that these technologies are real, they are very real. And also, if you go to research it, go online and research consciousness, you'll find the zip, because it's all hidden as well. It's banned. It's any kind of consciousness. Even people that are doing EKGs and doing brain stuff, the technology is basically, they need to read the spectrum of the brain wave of a millionth. And I'm just throwing these numbers out. These aren't actual numbers, but they need to look at it at a millionth of the wave. But really, they can only see a one of the wave. Do you get what I'm saying? Like the resolution, they're looking at it with a 10 resolution when they need a 50 million resolution to look at brainwaves to achieve this quantum consciousness technology that their space programs have been using and the ETs are using all throughout the cosmos, because it's a very powerful form of technology. So it's banned from us, it's hidden from us, and it's a very big thing.
But it's being used here. I mean,
Yeah.
aren't these ETs working with all of the governments of this planet?
Well, look, I said it like this. So our entire power structure for literally every organization aggregates to just a handful of people at the top. So with this technology, it is entirely possible. So they have movies about it. So you saw it in the movie, but really, I've talked to other people that have had it happen. I've talked to researchers that have researched people, and they've checked out a lot of stuff. And it is possible to take somebody's consciousness out of their body and put it somewhere and put another completely different consciousness in the body, and it can go carry out and do whatever it wants. So when you think in terms of politics, not even that, let's just say, the NBA. You can take the director of the NBA and take his consciousness and put your consciousness in it and go and make decisions for the NBA for a few weeks, and then put everything back how you found it, and you had your will done. You had everything taken. You could affect great change. Only a small amount of people can affect great change over literally millions of people. So that technology is real, and that's really when there's a lot of things that happen that don't make any sense to us. Why would our leaders do that? Why would they do that? Because they really didn't. Because you know what I mean? There are out-of-body technologies that are manipulating us as a whole, as a species.
No, I get that totally. Right on. That's right on.